Alright, so the conflict that we chose is the Iraq War. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to act despite our fears, by John McCain.
Tonight, CBS News correspondent David Martin on assignment.
Wait, this is the wrong video.
No one knew that, just play it.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
It was just over 90 minutes beyond President Bush's deadline for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq that U.S. warships and planes, there were F-117 stealth bombers involved, launched the opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The attack came in waves, cruise missiles, followed by the F-117 stealth bombers with so-called bunker-busting bombs. Their target, a bunker believed to be sheltering what are called top leaders of the Iraqi regime. Now, this is what it looked and sounded like in Baghdad. It was this short, and this is what happened.
So about some background information about the Iraq War. The start of it is when the U.S. went to Iraq to invade Kuwait, and that was the leading of the Gulf War. And then the American mission was to take down the Iraq government and the leader, Saddam Hussein. And then during the war, Iraq refused to let UN inspectors into the country. And then also during that, 9/11 happened, and the suspicion of Hussein raised. And then on March 20th, 2003, Bush ordered the invasion of Iraq. Here are some pictures. This can show some of the feelings that the soldiers were feeling during the war, of missing home, sadness, and then also fear and strength because of the boots and the guns. So some of the causes: Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. It was a 2-day operation. It gained control over 20% of the world's oil reserves. A ban on Iraqi oil sales would continue after the ceasefire, and the ban would be lifted, but only until Iraq destroyed its weapons of mass destruction, or WMD, under the UN supervision. Another causes was America's invaded Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein's reign on their government. He controlled Iraq for 24 years. He went into hiding after the American invasion, and then American soldiers found Hussein in a 6 to 8 foot deep hole, and then Americans captured him and arrested him. This is where they found Hussein. And then this is when he was captured.
December 2003, U.S. forces made a dramatic breakthrough in their search for Saddam. Soldiers had been seconds from throwing a hand grenade.
The individual clearly wanted to surrender. He said that I'm Saddam Hussein. I am the president of Iraq, and I wanted to negotiate. And then the response from U.S. soldiers was President Bush and others.
Saddam Hussein was found armed with a pistol, but was said to offer no resistance. He emerged from his hiding place, it was said, very much bewildered, and said hardly anything at first. He had been on the run for 8 months since Baghdad fell to U.S. forces in April 2000.
then some causes was feeling of vulnerability. They needed to restrain the future Iraqi aggression, so they needed to stop the process of lethal weapons and then halt the making of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. And then Iraq disregarded the ban and interfered with the inspections from the UN. It took the Gulf War to demonstrate that America did not want more than one friend in the Mideast, and also was willing to take and make major risks to prevent a small Muslim country, Kuwait, from being overrun and in effect stolen by Iraq, by Casper White.
Awesome. Those are dates. Move on. Okay, thank you.
So, for the American soldiers' mission, one, it was to destroy the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. Two, overthrow Saddam Hussein's rule of the government. And three, end suspicion of Hussein's supposed terrorists.
Okay, so some roles of American citizens during the Iraq War. There were different sides of opinions. America was pretty much split between the two. There wasn't like a side that was greater than the other. So 43% of U.S. Americans thought that the mission was right to do, and then 48% of Americans thought that it was wrong.
So, some U.S. world leaders are Tommy Franks, Donald Rumsfeld, and Robert Gates.
So, this is a U.S. war leader, General Raymond T. Odierno. He was the 38th Chief of Staff of the Army from 2011 to 2015. He commanded the 4th Infantry Division Operation Iraqi Freedom, and he also served as the Commanding General, Multinational Corps Iraq for the surge of forces in Iraq.
So, General Tommy Franks actually led the invasion of Afghanistan to overthrow the Taliban government in response to the attack on September 11th. And he also led the 2003 invasion of Iraq to overthrow Saddam Hussein. Some Iraq war leaders we have are Izzat Ibrahim, Taha Yassin, Barzan Mohammed, Ali Hassan, and Mohammed Yunus.
So here's a quote by Rosa DeLauro. American people stopped to remember the 3rd anniversary of the beginning of the Iraq War. We thought first and foremost of the selflessness, patriotism, and heroism by our troops, our National Guard and reserves.
So some of the political leaders we had during the war was George Bush, Barack Obama, Robert Gates, and Donald Rumsfeld.
So a political leader for Iraq was Marshal Saddam Hussein, and he was succeeded by the president of the Iraqi Council, Mohammed Bar al-Alul. Alright, so change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And that was a quote by Barack Obama. So some of the effects, it caused a large spike in the amount of suicides and mental illness amongst the U.S. military and soldiers themselves. Veterans between the ages 18 and 34 increased 40.4 deaths per 100,000 veterans to 45 in just 1 year. More suicides per month in the U.S. military returning vets than people killed in action by a long shot. That was a quote by Biden. And the Gulf War syndrome was basically, it was a disorder that affected returning military veterans. And I have a graph to show the spike in suicides since the beginning of the Iraq War. One of the effects is Al-Qaeda was one of the causes for the Iraq War with 9/11, but one of the effects was an emergence of ISIS. And ISIS is an extremist group that is known for their public executions and killing dozens of individuals at once. Another effect is during the Iraq War, $9 billion was lost or went missing. Also, $12 billion was transported from the Federal Reserve to Baghdad during the war. Keeping our militaries overseas out of the country was a very costly thing. to oversee.
So the effects was the collapse of the Ba'ath Erosion, and this is what united Syria and Iraq, and it resulted in major cities erupting and those of looting, which was a lot of loss of money, and it had a really major impact on the economy.
So during the war, the U.S. took a major economic impact because during the war, spending money is necessarily good because they're kind of sending goods and the things that they need for the soldiers down to Iraq. And afterwards, it's kind of bad because they're kind of trying to make up for what was lost in sending money and spending all that money, so they raise taxes.
This is a quote by Hillary Clinton. No matter what you think about the Iraq war, there's one thing we can all agree on for the next days. We have to salute and congratulate and salute the courage and bravery of those who are risking their lives to vote, and those brave Iraqi and American soldiers fighting to protect the right to vote.
So in this next picture, we have a picture of our veteran Josh, who is on top of a Sikorsky CH-53D helicopter, and they're moving the main rotor.
All right, you ready, Josh? Okay. All right. You can move if you want. You don't have to stand behind them if you don't want to. Okay, this is Josh Powell. I'm gonna let him kind of introduce himself, and then if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and do that, and we'll do that like we've been doing with the other vets that have come in and talked. All right, Josh.
My name's Josh Powell. Served in the United States Marine Corps. It's a good representation of what I did right there. I was a heavy helicopter mechanic. Very large cargo and troop helicopter there. Hence why all of us are on top of it. Takes a lot of guys to maintain those helicopters. I was just one of them. And our mission for those helicopters was cargo and troop transport. And we did that in support of the attack helicopter units. We'd get the soldiers or Marines out into the field where they needed so they could fight the war. And yeah, I was there on and off in Iraq from 2004 to 2008, and saw quite a bit. Got to work with the Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, Navy, and also like Australian Army, people from around the world. Everybody was over there. You know, the British Army was over there. So it was really cool seeing, you know, all of us there for a common effort. And yeah, I started the Marine Corps right after high school. Probably the best thing for me. I wasn't necessarily ready to go to college. The Marine Corps really changed a lot of things about me. You know, made me more responsible. Gave me a great opportunity. Gave me a skill that I still use to this day with my job. I'm very grateful for that. I work here in Fort Wayne now. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Sweetwater Sound, you know, Sweetwater the Music, Pro Audio. Well, we have a helicopter company too. So I'm the director of maintenance for Sweet Helicopters. And so every day I get to work on helicopters. They're really nice charter helicopters that are owned by Chuck and Sweet Helicopters. And yeah, it's a great job. It's actually a dream job, but it all started with me joining the military, which, you know, was a really good option for me because I wasn't ready for college at that time. But then I did get out of the Marine Corps and I did go to college for a couple of years, and you know, graduated with an almost a perfect GPA. So, you know, it was, you know, there's all sorts of different ways to go when you get out of school. But all this right now for you guys is preparation to give yourselves as many opportunities, as many options as you can when it comes that time. So, you know, although it worked out for me, you know, I wouldn't change it for the world. I don't think I would have wanted to go to college at that time. I kind of got the best of both worlds because I got to travel the world doing this, and then I get to go spend time with them on the weekends and be a college kid. But whenever I came home, so.
Josh, so when you entered the military, what, 1994-ish, what did they do training-wise from when you first entered until you got to go to Iraq eventually? Can you describe some of that to them?
Well, depending on where you were stationed at, you started with basic training, and that's where you would basically become a Marine first, or they called it a basic rifleman. They teach you, you know, about just like basic combat skills and stuff like that, hand-to-hand combat, trained on several different firearms. Just learned a lot about the history of the Marine Corps and the military all around. Ran physical fitness tests. I mean, everything about being a Marine was just about your proficiency in using weapons and being in shape and being able to fight for yourself and fight for your country. So started in boot camp, but then after we graduated boot camp, depending on where you were stationed at, you would train for the climate that you were potentially going to deploy to. So me being stationed on the West Coast, we did desert warfare training in Yuma, Arizona, and 29 Palms, California, because that was the closest we could get to actually being in the combat zones that we were going to be deployed to. So we would go out there and we'd do mock war situations. We would train, fly, live with the least amount of accommodations possible. You know, we were trying to simulate being in a combat zone before we were actually there.
So, because you were in the military and then you went back to Iraq on a whole different front when you weren't really part of the military, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Did my 4 years active duty time. Got out of the Marine Corps, was a civilian helicopter mechanic for a few years, then ended up deploying with Marine Corps units back overseas as a civilian contractor, and just ate, slept, breathed with the Marines. You know, we all lived and worked together. There wasn't much else going on out there. Worked about 12 to 14 hours a day just maintaining these helicopters so that we could keep them flying and support the missions. Not only did I work on the cargo and troop helicopters, but I worked on all the Marine attack helicopters, so that was pretty cool seeing, you know, the AH-1 Whiskies, the Cobras. They'd be fully armed and they'd leave, and then they'd come back and all the missile racks were empty, so you knew they were out there doing something pretty serious. Yes?
What was like the biggest difference between the place where you trained for like the desert thing and the actual place where you were?
Good question.
The biggest difference probably was that even though we're in a training environment, it didn't, I guess it's kind of like a fire drill. You really didn't, not to say didn't take it seriously, but it wasn't real until you really got into a combat zone and people were shooting, you know, missiles and rockets at you and stuff like for real, and they're exploding, you know, 100 yards away from you. That stuff we really didn't take the time to do, or could not duplicate in those environments. So, you know, just being in the actual environment, it just makes it real. You know, you can train up to a certain point, but you can never really cover all the bases to prepare you for what's actually going to happen. There's just too many variables.
Go ahead, take it.
So, what made you choose the Marine Corps specifically?
Good question.
Yeah. I don't know. The way that I saw it was I was either going to go all the way with it. You know, I wanted the most challenge. I wanted the hardest branch of service. I wanted to be the most proud of what I was doing when I got out of boot camp and became a Marine. To me, it was all about doing something that was going to challenge me. My father served in the Vietnam War in the Marine Corps, so that had a little bit something to do with it as well. He didn't want me joining the Marine Corps. He told me to join the Air Force because it was easier. But, you know, I was kind of hard-headed about that. So, and I don't regret any of that either. There may have been some different opportunities for me in other branches of services, but I don't think I would have gotten what I got out of my entire time in service in any other branch of service in the Marine Corps.
Somebody else? Oh, go ahead, Emily.
What was your most memorable experience?
Good question.
In service? I just really liked being a Marine, and I liked the camaraderie overall. I was stationed in Hawaii, so I really enjoyed my time out there. We moved our entire unit out there. I spent 2.5 years out there. Just probably the most memorable is like an overall memory of the time I spent with other Marines I'm still really good friends, and I keep in close contact with guys. You know, it's going on 25 years later. So, yeah, I'd say just the overall memory of being a Marine and the camaraderie. I'd say no one particular memory.
Hey, tell them, because you like this part too, but tell them about even the softball aspect of it. Like, because I think that's something that people don't realize. Like, Josh it's kind of cool because his career he wouldn't be where he's at if he wasn't in the military. But the cool part is, in the military, he was learning how to prepare himself for a job he would later have. Like, working on helicopters isn't something everybody can do. So he had an opportunity to do this, but he also was good at a sport, and I'll let you go ahead on that.
Well, I was always interested in continuing playing sports as an adult, you know, and so for me, instead of college or after high school, it was the Marine Corps. And I started playing on baseball teams when I was stationed in California and Hawaii. Then I got into playing slow pitch softball, and actually progressed through the levels and was invited to try out for the All-Marine softball team. So it was just all the best players in the entire Marine Corps that played softball. And then we all tried out, and they kept 15 of us. So in 1998, I played on that team. We represented the Marine Corps as the branch of service, and we went to the All Armed Forces Championships in Fort Collins, Colorado, and played against the other 4 branches. So all the best softball players in all the military, and we played against each other out there in a big tournament. It took a week long to play it. So very interesting. So I think what you're getting at is, not only can you get a skill in the military, you know, or acquire a skill or learn a skill, but there's opportunities like that for you to play a sport. Because softball wasn't a year-round conditioning sport, but if you wrestled or boxed, they have all-marine boxing, all-marine wrestling. That's an all-year-round. It's a conditioning deal. So if it's a sport that requires intense conditioning, that could be your job the entire time you're in there.
Yep.
And I don't know if anybody in here plays in the band, but the Marine Corps band is huge. It's actually very prestigious. So there's people that join the military just to play in the band too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunities, you know, in the military.
Go ahead, Sophia.
What's the most difficult part about leaving home?
It never really hit home until I was actually gone. You know, I was very ready to go, and I remember my mom dropping me off at the recruiting station to go to boot camp, and I just started crying. You know, that's when it hit me that I was going to be gone, and I didn't know how long, and I didn't know what I was getting into. You know, saying goodbye to your loved ones, especially all the times I went back and forth overseas to Iraq. You know, it was always come home, see everybody, very happy to be home, and then you have to say goodbye to everybody again. You know, but you know, it was all in hopes, and you went over there, and you had to stay positive and think you were coming home. You know, so you could be focused on your job and get home to your loved ones.
Yeah, especially. Go ahead. Hey.
What was a valuable lesson that you learned during service?
Valuable lesson. I'd say just responsibility, like overall responsibility and discipline. Not to say I was completely irresponsible before I joined the Marine Corps, but they kind of drove it home about having a sense of pride in what you do. I'm huge on having pride and ownership in every job that I've ever had, and I have a huge pride and ownership in what I do now with the company I work for. It's just always been, I guess the Marine Corps just always, they taught me to really just try and excel at every opportunity you have. So I've never been the guy that just gets in a position and stays there. I like to really push myself and try to achieve as much as I can. And I think the Marine Corps taught me that, or at least, you know, amplified that inside of me.
Questions for anybody else? Josh, we have a lot of friends that went into the military too, and their roles are all different. Like, what was one aspect of training, whether it was training to work on helicopters or just training in general, that you thoroughly enjoyed and feel like that actually molded you through the rest of the 15 years almost in at some point? Yeah.
Right. The job itself, being a helicopter mechanic, I mean, it was very I guess, in depth, and you had to really learn a lot. I mean, if you guys have ever seen these helicopters before, or ever seen them up close, you know, there's a lot that goes on with them. Not only the helicopter aspect, but back on the discipline thing, I was pretty good at shooting weapons as well, and I went to a primary marksmanship school and became the rifle coach for my squadron. And I actually had a lot of pride in that, teaching people to have the discipline to be able to shoot a weapon accurately from a long range. I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds. Some of you guys may have shot before. Kind of difficult to do when you're taking everything into account. But again, it goes back to that discipline, you know, and just kind of the drive just to work hard to achieve something that you want. And for me, it was to try to be the best rifleman that I could, as well as being a good mechanic. So, yes.
So, I know you talked about like when you were down in California, you know, training and conditions. What like, I'm sure it was hard, so like what kept you in it? Like what made you like stay in that and what pushed you?
For me, like, giving up was not an option, you know, when I joined. A lot of people went to boot camp in California there, and they would want to drop out or quit, you know, like a short time through it. To me, that was it never crossed my mind, because I knew that I couldn't go home if I didn't actually make it in boot camp. I didn't, the sense of pride and I guess the pride itself. But did you say what kept me going? To be honest, back then it was quite different. So we would write letters back and forth. So just being in communication with my family back home and stuff, and having encouragement from them meant a lot to me. You know, when I was in boot camp and thereafter, you know, my superiors, like my bosses and stuff, that's what another thing that taught me to really have respect for my bosses and like someone that's in charge of me. I always just wanted to do really well for them, and just be the person that they can count on. So that was a drive in itself, you know, with my drill instructors and my platoon leaders, you know, when I was in combat training, because I wanted to do well for them, and I guess kind of make them proud of me as well. So, you know, all that stuff, you know, encouragement from the family, and then just wanting to do well for your leaders. Yes. What's that?
Say it again, Angelina.
What's the most traumatic experience?
There was a couple of them. You know, luckily for me, I never actually got hit by any sort of, you know, small arms fire or any shrapnel from a rocket or anything like that. But I was very close twice. One time I was riding a bicycle, believe it or not, up through our maintenance hangar. And normally I would have been on the other side of the hangar that day, but we had a meeting that morning, and they shot a missile, a 128 millimeter missile, in, and it hit the flight line right there and exploded in between 4 helicopters. And had I been on the path that I normally was that day, I'd have been right in the middle of it. But even being that close to it, it knocked me off my bicycle, and it just scared the crap out of me, to be honest. You know, so and I was in a building one time where a rocket hit, and luckily there was 2 walls in between us. Everybody on the other side of the walls died, and I was on this side, so I was good to go. So pretty traumatic knowing you're that close to people losing their lives. Yes.
Was there anything you or the people you were with did to keep a calm environment after?
Ooh, that's a good
After
question.
something like that happened?
Or-
Trying to think, we would normally, it was a lot of reaction too. I mean, being trained to be in the military and stuff, you know, is when something like that happens, your natural instinct is that you want to help, you know, but, you know, in a situation that's chaotic like that, sometimes letting a few people help and tend to that situation, and everybody else come back and just kind of take care of each other. I think just comforting people, being there for another person, you know, when a situation like that happens, just being able to talk about it and actually just care for each other. Being in a combat zone is difficult to find a calm place when something like that happens, because, you know, just like I said, it's traumatic for me. I mean, it affects everybody differently. So I'd say in order to get to the calm place, it just takes time, you know, but it's difficult to do right at that moment, though. Yes.
Was it hard transitioning back from going on base back home?
Yeah, the hardest part for me was just the tempo of the way things work when you're overseas, or in a combat zone, or even in a training environment. You're just 100. I mean, you're 100 miles an hour all the time. You're basically working, eating, and sleeping. So when you come back to the States and everything slows down, it's difficult. You know, it's hard to keep yourself busy to the point where you're satisfied with what you're doing. It took me a long time to actually dial it down to a point, and I'm still not very good at that. I still go really hard after my job and stuff and everything I do. So it's I guess it's still there with me, but I have learned to relax a little bit. But you know, a lot of people have some issues coming back from there, just from the things that they've seen or the tempo of the work or the environment. I can say for years, I can say up until yesterday it happened again. You know, a large bang or something, a clang, you know, kind of makes my heart drop, you know, because I don't know, it's just happened enough where it's just kind of stuck, it just kind of sticks with you. But you can find yourself doing a lot of things you probably shouldn't be doing if you don't come back and try to make the adjustment, though. So a lot of guys will turn to drinking, stuff like that, maybe drugs, but you know, I know, just like you guys showed the numbers there, you know, since the Iraq War or the Persian Gulf War, the number of suicides is like, what, doubled to tripled, you know, so I still use the VA hospital for all my medical needs. I've had the same doctor there since 2001, and I actually give them my insurance information and everything, and I go there. I'm not service connected disabled, so I don't go for free. But I'm happy to do it because I like the support that they give me as a veteran, and it's good to see other veterans there and see what they're going through and stuff, because it's you have every era of veteran you'll see walking around that place, and you know, it's just nice to be in the same place with fellow veterans and support each other.
Chloe, did you have a question, or is that about the same?
What was like a day like at boot camp?
Oh,
You
normally wake up to like trash cans, you know, getting thrown down the middle of the squad bay. You know, the drill instructors would literally wake you up every morning screaming in your face. So, yeah. And you were so tired. I mean, believe me, you weren't. When your head hit the pillow, you were out. And they used to like to pick on you at night too a little bit. You know, they come around and mess with you. But yeah, every morning. I mean, it was just get up, get dressed, get all your gear on, and you were training immediately. I mean, they had a very intense schedule, regimented, just all waking hours of the day. You'd have about a half hour, 45 minutes at the end of the night just to take a shower, get all your stuff ready for the next day. So you're talking 13 weeks of really intense training. So, but it was all different environments. It'd be physical for a while, then we'd go sit in the classroom and learn about marksmanship, or might be learning about like the history of the Marine Corps or something, or CPR, you know, all sorts of different training like that, you know, being able to put like battle dressings on someone in a combat zone, you know, to save their life. There's just so much to it. They did a good job about breaking it up, although, you know, doing the physical activity and then going in the classroom, you'd be a little wore out, and, you know, they just wait for you to fall asleep. You weren't allowed to do that. Yes?
Kenzie, last question.
Even after boot camp, was there like one situation that you still felt like unprepared for?
Ooh,
That's a
great question.
You know, at that point, I guess I kind of felt maybe unprepared, although they tried to prepare you for transitioning back from being in the military into the civilian world, because things were so different. At that point in my life, I hadn't had any real job, like a full-time job. I mean, we always worked part-time jobs in high school and stuff, but you know, getting back out into the real world and getting a job, so, you know, just entering into the civilian workforce and going to school and stuff was a little different, you know. But, you know, I think that's what the Marine Corps helped me prepare for, just overall, just maturity and a little bit of wisdom and discipline. And then that helped me, you know, do what I did after. I went straight into school after I got out. I think I horsed around for about 6 months. But, you know,
It was a good horse.
that was a good time. Good time. Yeah. But I mean, the military is a lot about what you can take from it. I mean, it's what you want to make of it. I mean, how seriously do you want to take it, and how seriously do you want to take how you can benefit from it? Because, you know, I took every opportunity that I could to learn as many skills as I could. That's why I did the marksmanship stuff, played the softball, and then, you know, gained the skill that I still use to this day.
All right, well, make sure you thank Josh on your way out.